this is how you make a career doing awesome shit, is find the thing that interests you so much, the thing that you're fascinated by, and build a living and a life writing and thinking about it. And it's that altered state, the ability to unlock the impossible as a replicable, like, analyzing the things that the best shit in the world happens when you're in this state. What does that state look like, and how can we get there more often? That thing inside you that you want to do, that's the thing that you should do. And chances are there's a story that you're telling yourself about why you can't or why it's hard. And if you can step back just for a second, whether through meditation or self-awareness or actually just listening to the words and then walking away from this video and like think, like, what really is keeping me from doing that? Oh, I've got a mortgage. Okay, do I need to be in that big house? Can I downsize? Oh, it's my kids. Well, you're certainly not going to, like, the kids aren't going to go live on the street. So can you sit down with the family and say, look, I really want to pursue this. How can we mitigate the risk? Like, are you proactively doing those things? Because at the end of the day, what I found across the board, having ultimately been a career counselor to millions of people, is that the distance between where you are right now and where you want to be, living whatever life that is, it's much shorter than you think it is. You wake up and we've got that 3 a.m. crocodile brain that's telling us how bad we're doing and how far away everything is and how hard everything is. But if you stepped away from that and just did an honest assessment and wrote down as few steps as you could, the distance is always shorter than you think it is. So I don't know about you, Evan. It seems to me like you're living your passion and you've created a living and a life for yourself around this. So I'd hope you'd join me in this. But I think it's fair to say that there are a lot of barriers between you and that thing, but as soon as you realize that those barriers are there to keep everybody else out, it'll free you up to go after your dreams. Recognize it might be a tad outdated. I'm going to call it out, though, and that's the safety video from Virgin.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Virgin, when, this is a number of years ago, 5 years ago when Virgin America, 5 to 8 years ago, Virgin America launched, whenever that was, and their safety video was just flush with, it was beautifully shot, it was interesting, it was funny, it was an area that nobody believed innovation was possible. And the sweet irony is that it's in those cracks where you can stick a wedge in and make an experience, because it's where people don't expect it, where there's an opportunity to thrive. If you're trying to compete with people on fuel prices or just price alone, or how fluffy is the pillow, or like all those things are things that the airline, amen, the airlines have fought around for years and years, but it was thought that was untouchable until Virgin pushed it. And now, we're years later, and everyone's trying to be cutesy, and there are some with better or more or less success than others. But when I think of anyone who's listening to our talk, I keep going back to the fact that what's the safety video in your world? Where are people not expecting to have an amazing experience, and how can you give them something there? And if you think about that spectrum, there's so many touch points.
Did she just say so small to you?
Yes, I've never heard that before. I think if I'm just like 3 a.m. sitting in your bed all by yourself, honest, it is that there's this very powerful thing inside all of us, and particularly that, using, as you suggested, those 30 people as an example, there's this a belief in your intuition. I have the answers in here. Sure, I should look for other things out there in the world for, market ideas and things like that, but things that I care about, that I'm willing to push through when stuff gets hard, problems that I want to solve, and the way that I think the world should be. When you start to think about what you know and trust what you have inside of you, I feel like that's you're going to hear so much negativity and so many no's. There's always a reason not to do something, but each of the people in 30 Days of Genius, they had this very strong sense, and sometimes they didn't always have it, they had to work to develop it, sense of what they wanted the world to look like. And I know you're a Jobs fan. I can see him over your right shoulder right there on the wall behind you. Steve Jobs said that the things around us these were invented by nobody. This remote control, these records, this TV. They were all invented by someone no smarter than you are. And they're just people who decided that they were going to make the world in the shape that they wanted it to be in, rather than be a cork in the tide of the world that everyone creates around them. And that was a very common thread in 30 Days of Genius, is the willingness to sort of take chances and try and shape your world rather than be shaped. Now, is because how your rants differ from others is they have a kernel of wisdom that is a mile wide and 1,000 miles deep. I was actually sort of reliving, as you were talking about early internet days, my particular experience, which I like to think is very similar to the experience that a lot of people who self-identify as creative or entrepreneurial, which is this: there's a constant sort of cycle. And it was a conversation in my head. If I do this and I put it out, what will happen? And there's a million scenarios that go through your head. And what I found out for myself was that conversation was incredibly toxic.
Yep.
And what I'm hoping to get through with this interview and others is that what you need to do is the conversation. We have this weird part of our brain that tells us that this is a helpful conversation, that this is what thinking is.
Exactly.
And the reality is that it's toxic as hell, and we need to sort of stay away from it. Is your answer to that narrative, that false story that we're telling ourselves, is it just making? Is it doing? Like, what is the answer? I mean, I'm extracting that from what you just said about get on the boat. Instead of taking notes, be present. Instead of judging, publish. Am I oversimplifying the message? I think there's a weird. You have to know your industry for sure. That's very, very beneficial. But all the big hacks, the leaps, the sort of the leapfrog things that I did in my career came from outside my industry. So instead of learning from other photographers, well, I have a huge respect for the masters that have, paved the way before me, but I took a lot of cues from Andy Warhol and Jean-Michel Basquiat and Robert Rauschenberg, the artists in New York in the 60s, 70s, 50s, 60s, 70s, because they were sort of, again, they were hackers. They were finding out how to hack the system, and they were making art about making art. They were sort of reinventing the game while they were playing it.
Right.
And I was always motivated to try and apply that to my work. And not so literally, instead of taking in the way of taking a picture of a picture, like that would be too literal. The meta thing was fine, but I'm talking about how do you differentiate yourself in the marketplace?
Yeah.
If I look across and everyone else is doing this, how do you zig when everyone else is zagging?
Right. As opposed to trying to get better at zigging.
Yeah. Be different, not better.
But talk to me about visualization. How specifically do you do it? How concrete are the images in your mind? What's like the end goal?
I read headlines, actual words in an article. I write an article
in your mind.
I write an article or a press release or I'm literally reading the outcome as if it has already happened and being reported to.
Chase Jarvis wins an award for revolutionary new photo technique.
Sure. Yeah. I try and be less me-centric. My goals are a little bit involve like movements or groups of people or Creative Live. But I have personal goals for sure. But anything that's more public-facing, I have a press release written in my head and I read it in my mind's eye every day, every morning.
The same one, or you're constantly reading?
I have a base narrative that I go to, and so it's not literally the same exact words, but it's same in principle. And
I've never heard that before. It's super powerful.
I grew up playing soccer and went to college on a soccer scholarship, and it was somewhere in junior high, early high school, where it was Olympic development. They started developing kids for the Olympics, smaller, little, like they're called the Olympic development teams. And my coach for one of these ODP teams started talking about sports psychology. And
which, by the way, might have been the very first, like right when you were young. Yeah. That's probably when sports psychology was brand new, right?
Yeah. And I like to read, and I was given a book, and there wasn't. No one could articulate it at that level because it was still Olympic development, but I'll cut to the chase. I was given a book. I was massively intrigued. I started doing everything I could on my own, and I begged my parents, who we were very middle class, lower middle class. I mean, I had upside down Nikes and Adidas with 4 stripes, and to help me find a way to see a professional, someone who could help me with this. And I saw one person one time, and they gave me a handful of tools, and I used those mental tools to what I considered to do something that was impossible, which was to see the future, to know how many goals I was going to score in the next season, and ultimately to land a soccer scholarship at the top soccer school in the country. And I have been hooked. That was when I was probably 15, 16, and I have been fascinated, obsessed with that, the psychology around human performance and what's possible since then.
Walk us through a couple of the ones that you think are just critical.
Since you asked me to choose a couple, I'll just choose the first 3 because I think they're the top ones, which is creativity, access, and community. So creativity, I think it's the thing that differentiates us from so many of the species on the planet. The fact that we can take 2 disparate ideas that weren't otherwise together, put those things together to make something new and ideally useful.
Can people train themselves to do that?
Absolutely. It's not a skill, it's a habit.
Love that.
I
How
think
does one get into that habit?
you get into it by doing it. That's the thing. It feels very unnatural at first, and then try things like morning pages. Try things like creating something every day. Since we all have phones with us, it's very easy to do these things. Playing the guitar, taking pictures every day, writing in a journal. All those things will make you better brain surgeons, a better athlete, the science is abundantly clear that creativity creates creativity. I should know the study. There's this great study that is unequivocal, like creativity creates creativity. And it's not necessarily field specific, just there's new pathways in the brain of connecting unlikely things to make something new and useful. So having that as a core value is a no-brainer. It is also, that's one of my core missions as a human, is to make the world a more creative place. Second one, access. I realized when I decided, threw away everybody else's narrative for me, that I wanted to be a creator, a professional photographer, and a director, that when I looked around, that I didn't have access to experts. This is really pre or early net. No, the idea of behind the scenes video, like that, those words didn't even, they were never put together. Behind the scenes video, like it wasn't a part of the lexicon of culture. And I was like, wait a minute, this is terrible, because there are so many people, they did call it mentors, but mentors were behind locked doors and, in ivory towers and buildings covered with ivy, and I didn't have access to any of that. And so I had to sort of take the swings myself, learn from experience. It's like, why am I doing this? And like so many other people could benefit. So I started sharing that. That first sort of inclination of access is in part, I believe, why I was sitting here today, because I have cultivated a world where that is normal, a world around me. That's what Creative Live, obviously it's a core value there, but I started out as a photographer by sharing trade secrets. This is what it's like. This is my behind the scenes with, professional athlete X, Y, or Z, or this famous snowboarder or whatever, and this is what it's like to suck. This is what it's like to get a job and lose a job, and providing access to my life. And it was totally incidental. I was trying to help my industry because I figured if I could set a paradigm for sharing secrets about photography, that I could actually, someone else would reciprocate and I could learn something too. That's access. And community is our third one. Community is also, I think it's fundamentally one of the reasons that I'm sitting here on your couch, having built community and having, when I mentioned earlier, why did you start the show? Well, you're building community. You're serving your own needs by, having people that are inspirational to you sit here in the chair next to you, but everyone in the room and beyond. Ultimately, that distills to community. And if you've given value to that community, I'm sure you've also received a ton of value. The folks who are liking and sharing and helping support your vision and mission here. Same is true for Creative Live. We have 10 million students. We serve every country on the planet. So this is crazy global community of creators who are all trying to figure it out, who are all told that, only some of us are creative. We're all told that in order to be a great artist, you shouldn't touch business. In order to be a business person, then you just have to be cutthroat. And I just don't believe in those paradigms. And if we can learn and leverage one another's skills and share information, then how much better would the world be? So that's sort of three of the core values, three of our seven. These are how we make decisions in the company.
That was amazing.
Anytime a brand asks if you want to photograph your dreams, you obviously say yes.